we already feel isolated enough. Like we've already got something going on that we don't really feel like we can share. But if we have people saying, actually, like give me the nitty gritty of it, let's not beat around the bush here. It makes you feel so much better.
Because I think we do spend a lot of our lives saying, well, I could have done that better.
Yeah.
How do I grieve well? You feel what you feel.
Yeah.
And I think allow yourself to let those feelings in.
So, guys, now I am bringing on my mother, Victoria Milligan. Hey, say hi.
Hello, Amber. This is really bizarre to be on a sofa with you doing a podcast.
It is. This does feel quite weird, guys. So the reason that I have asked my mum to come on is I think it's really important to give a different perspective of a challenge. Obviously, for young people going through something, you can be inside your head a lot of the time. It can be very one-dimensional. However, a parent can always see things that you don't know that they see. So I think it'll be quite interesting to get your take. And also, you work a lot in overcoming adversity and building resilience. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess after the accident, there were so many losses. I lost my husband, your dad, my little girl, and my leg. And it was such a sudden loss, an incredible sudden change, that I kind of wanted to help people how to navigate life's curveballs, because things come out the blue and it's so hard to know. We could get completely knocked flat, but actually there are things that we can do to learn how to be more resilient and more adaptable in life. So when these awful things happen, we kind of don't break like stone, but bend like bamboo. That's how I try and look at it. I think it's an old Buddhist phrase, actually, that I've kind of slightly stolen. But it symbolises that whole thought of actually, when you're so rigid and fixed in your life and controllingness and everything, and something happens out the blue that you can't cope with, a lot of people do just break and they can't manage to pick themselves back up again. So for me, it's kind of that whole fluidity of this horrendous thing has happened, but let's see what I can do to kind of cope with it. Yeah. And I kind of talk to corporate companies, to different groups of people about what I've experienced and what I've learnt about how to become more resilient and kind of manage change.
Also, shameless plug, but she's being very humble. She's done an amazing TEDx talk. So if anyone wants to listen to that as well, it is very, very interesting and insightful.
Thank you.
So, Mum, we've talked about my side of things, my perspective. Could you tell us a bit about your perspective on what happened?
I feel like the initial aftermath was quite a blur for me. It was operations and I was immobile. Obviously, I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. Kit was in a wheelchair. And I remember just feeling really guilty about you and Olivia and Kit. You were on a different floor to me in the hospital. I remember feeling really separate and quite sort of isolated. And I had to call somebody to help me come up to see you. I just felt such pain and sorrow for your loss. The fact that you had lost your dad and your little sister, and that then you were left with this parent who had lost a leg, so that you were left with this disabled parent. And I just remember feeling, I think desperate is the only word that I can use, about how on earth can life carry on, and how on earth can I be the parent that I want to be to you three going forward. And I remember you guys having to be looked after by various friends and family, and kind of being shoved from kind of one place to the next. And I don't know if it felt like that for you, but for me it was very much, I can't physically walk and Kit can't walk, so I have to be in hospital to look after him. Yeah. And we just needed you guys to be looked after because you were, 12 and 11? Yeah. So that, I think at the beginning was so horrific and so difficult. And I think then as time has gone on, watching you guys be so brave in the face of adversity, I mean, I'm so proud of you, and I don't want this to be a kind of love-in, I think you're amazing, because I do think you're amazing. But I'm so proud of how you and Olivia and Kit have supported each other, but also supported me. And I think what we have done well is that we've been really honest and open with each other. Yeah. We've really talked about the difficult days that happen after loss, that there are so many of them. There's Dad's birthday, there's Emily's birthday, there's Christmas, there's Easter, there's all those kind of your birthdays that they should be there. Yeah. And I think, especially at the beginning, we were so good at kind of saying, well, what should we do? Let's just not wake up on the day and go, oh my God, this is like the saddest day ever.
Yeah.
Let's just say, okay, what would Emily have liked to do?
Yeah.
Or what would Dad have liked to do? And I think we did that quite well.
Yeah.
Do you?
I agree. I think we try to make as much of an effort to honour their memory, which I think if you are going through grief, if you've lost a loved one, I think something that definitely that you decided to do, which actually really helped my siblings and I, was, for example, my dad loved Cadbury's, so an F1. So on his birthday, we'd always, watch, reruns of F1 that he loved, like all the drivers that he loved, and we'd eat Cadbury's. And for Emily, like, she was so bubbly and she was such an all-rounder that we just kind of fill the day with as much like light and vibrance and positivity as we could. And that made us feel better.
Aww.
But it also kind of felt like we were doing them justice a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. It felt like they were present.
Yeah.
It was like, do you remember that time when my friend Teresa made the Cadbury's cake for his birthday and we all sat down? And it was that whole keeping their memory alive. I still feel like we're a family of 6 with 2 people missing.
Agreed, yeah.
And I feel that as we get further away from that time, it's harder to kind of keep them alive. But I think we really do. And we talk about them and we have pictures of them everywhere.
Yeah.
So they feel, even though they're physically not present, I still feel like we have a relationship with them.
Yeah. I think for so long during my grief journey, I always experienced so much anger. So for a long time, I think I couldn't even look at photos of them in the house. Like I think the first half of my teenage years, I couldn't look at Dad. And then now it's more like I can't.
It makes me really sad.
Oh, no, don't.
No, I know, but I didn't know that.
Oh,
Yeah. So you couldn't look at their pictures?
no, I couldn't. And now it's more like I can look at their pictures now, but I think during uni I couldn't really look at Emily.
Yeah.
And I think a really, really important thing that I learned, especially from you, is the importance of keeping their memory alive. The more that we did things to remember them, and the more that I would, watch these home videos of them, because my dad used to literally film everything.
Yes.
And I think you must have found it so annoying, but literally like everything under the sun he used to film. And eventually I was just like, I don't want to lose the memory of this amazing man or this amazing girl. So I just sat down and watched these home videos. And I think for someone who is experiencing grief, it's it's an emotional roller coaster, as you can imagine. It is intense, but it's also so beautiful. And you can connect with someone that's not there. That's what I found really interesting, is being able to, sit down and watch these videos of 2 people who aren't in my life anymore, but were such a massive part of my life, and being able to sit down and actually feel like they're there again, which I found really, really beneficial.
Oh, I think that's so beautiful and really brave, because watching those videos, Emily comes onto the screen all light and laughter and joy and 8-year-oldness. And it's I find it like a bit of a punch in the stomach the first time you do it.
Yeah.
And I remember someone saying to me, actually, don't take pictures down, because then when you do see a picture, it's such a shock that actually you need to almost surround yourself with them, because then they are still a part of your life. And the thing is that I've realised is they're always going to be a part of our life. We're always going to be grieving because we love them so much. But the grief, I don't know how you find it, it does get softer. It's not as painful and stabbing and horrific as it was at the beginning.
Yeah.
Someone described it to me as sort of like a tennis ball in a jam jar at the beginning. So it takes up everything, like your entire brain, thinking, life. You can't think about anything else other than that grief. And as life moves on, so we're nearly 11 years afterwards, you imagine putting that tennis ball into a bell jar. So it's the same size, but your life has grown around it.
Yeah.
Your life has got bigger, and it's not as completely overwhelming as it was at the beginning.
Yeah.
Life can't help but move on a bit.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we don't still miss them, but maybe not in such a painful way.
One thing that I wanted to touch on quickly is, obviously you have had 3 kids who have experienced grief. One of them, Kit, was 4 when it happened. Olivia was 10 when it happened, and I was 12. And I think it's very important to note that from my experience personally, Sapna and I were talking a lot about the shop blanket after.
Yeah.
And I think obviously the shop blanket is really, really beneficial. But also my experience growing up at school was, I don't know if I fully handled my grief as head on. And I think going to university, where I had to meet a whole new group of people, realising actually I have to tackle it head on. I will never forget one time I called you at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I hadn't, not because I'd been out, but I hadn't slept all night. And I was like, listen, I know that you don't want to talk about this. I know that it's really upsetting, but I do just need to know what happened for my own sake, like for my sanity. Can you just give me some more insight? And you did. And from there, I felt like I could actually properly get the help that I need. And a lot of my relationships with uni changed around that time as well. I had some friends coming up to me saying, you know, I can actually like, you have a spark back now. Like I can see you've got a spark back. And I think that is just something to be aware of for someone who is going through some sort of loss or challenge. It doesn't have to be related to grief, whether it's divorce or whether it's, you know, attachment issues. I do think once you go to uni and you're not as like kind of as a stable environment as you were in before, I do think just be very aware of the situation that you're in. Be very, very understanding of your emotions, because you're going to have so many new emotions in your head because you're in a completely new situation, a completely new environment. So just be very gentle with yourself and very caring.
I think that's such a good point. I think you move from, as you say, a kind of nurturing, supportive environment where everybody knows you and everyone knows your situation. And suddenly you have to go into this whole new, enormous place, meet a whole load of new people. Do you want to be identified as the person that doesn't have a dad or has been through grief? And I know your sister struggles with telling people that she's actually doesn't have her father there.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think wrap yourself in cotton wool and really look after yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say as well, like, grief is so personal. And you saying that you didn't face it head on at school, but maybe that's okay, because maybe it would have been too painful to do it then. I think we all have our own coping mechanisms to cope in our own certain ways, blocking and denying and being busy, or I don't know, kind of whatever you do to numb the pain, whether it's drink or shopping or too much of anything.
Yeah.
But at some point, that anxiety level is going to come out and you do have to face it. And I think that was you with that 6 o'clock phone call. There's almost a wanting to understand what happened. And I think what's really important is acceptance of what's happened. And you can only start to process loss and grief or challenge when you've accepted where you are.
Yeah.
And that for you was that moment of, I need to understand it more and I need to accept what's happened so that I can start to move forward.
Yeah. I found talking about the accident really, really beneficial for me. I never had denial because I had closure instantly, obviously, seeing dad, etc. The more I spoke through it, it was more understandable to me. I think that's why at therapy I used to just repeat it like a story. And I did want to talk about it, but I also realised very, very quickly that a lot of people were very uncomfortable, as you should be. Like it's a very, very intense and deep topic to talk about. And I think a lot of people just don't know what to say. And so I kind of fell into this hole of I wouldn't tell anyone, and I'd build it up so much and then I would absolutely explode. And I know so many people, they feel like they're guilty of oversharing. I feel so awful about that word, oversharing and trauma dumping, because I know that, to be honest, I'm probably guilty of it, but I've never intentionally done it.
But is it also you choose the people that you want to do it with? You choose the people, you're not going to tell everybody.
Yeah,
but actually
agreed.
You have I think it's finding your tribe, isn't it?
Yeah.
And your allies.
Yeah.
And the ones that you feel super comfortable with, that you can share with, because, you know, it's not an easy thing to share. And I remember at the beginning, you know, people ducking down supermarket aisles. They wouldn't have to speak to me because they felt so awkward, or crossing the road. And, you know, that's going to make me feel so much worse than actually just coming up to me and saying, I'm so sorry what happened. It's great to see you, or whatever. But I think my advice to people who don't know what to say is just say something. Just acknowledge it. You don't have to try and make them feel better, because you're probably not going to make them feel better. But actually the worst thing is just avoiding them or avoiding the issue.
Yeah, agreed.
And actually just say, look, I don't want to offend in any way, but I just wanted to come up and say hello, sort of thing. And it's great to see you.
And I think also, if someone does come up to you and tell you, one of the things that kind of stopped me from talking about it, because I went for a long time where I didn't talk about it, because I remember I had told someone that I didn't know, and I got on with her really, really, really well, and she's a lovely girl, and I told her what happened. And then I heard through someone else that apparently it was very intense of me to say that, or it was, you know, saying too much. And I know that the girl didn't feel like that, and the girl was so lovely, and I felt really comfortable with her, and she still is a very good friend of mine now. But I felt so uncomfortable and so ashamed. And then I had another time, I heard a friend saying, well, like, if you've gone through that, none of us know what she's gone through, so it's understandable for her to want to let it all out. And I was like, it makes me feel so ashamed of myself that people are kind of talking about it like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it stopped me talking about it for ages. And then eventually I had a friend come up to me and say, you know what? At the end of the day, it is your story. You know, everyone has experienced something. You don't go through this life, you know, completely free of challenges. But at the end of the day, it is your story to tell. And if it makes you feel better and if it helps you cope, then tell it, and tell it to people who you're comfortable with. For example, like my housemates, you know, sometimes I'd be absolutely in tears in my room and I wouldn't want to talk to them. And they'd grab me and they'd sit me down and we'd have a bottle of wine and just get it all out. And I would wake up the next day feeling so much lighter.
Yeah.
So I think definitely if your close friend is going through something, just not all the time, but just be aware of it and just be there for them where you can and ask questions.
And I think keep checking in as well, because I think if you are overwhelmed by grief or any challenge that you're going through, I felt that my brain was not working to full capacity whatsoever. And so someone might call me in the morning and say, hey, you okay? Do you want me to come over? Or I'm going to the supermarket. Do you want anything? I'd be like, no, I'm absolutely fine. But then actually they call me from the supermarket and I suddenly realise that I do want something, because you're just kind of not functioning on kind of
your brain
all,
is fuzzy.
all cylinders.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's a really good point that you make. And also a lot of the time that's their stuff. If they can't cope with you telling them, maybe it's their stuff as well, or you kind of broach it by saying, look, can I talk to you about something really difficult?
Yeah.
I just really would love to share this with you. I feel that I can trust you, and I feel that we have a relationship that I could do this with you. Maybe there's a bit of a kind of precursor to it as well, because grief changes so much, doesn't it, as you get older? And I remember you kind of talking about being angry at school, and I'll never forget that one time, you know, kind of just thinking that your friends just did not have a clue what you were going through. And how on earth could they?
No, God,
But do you remember when it was, I think you were about 15 and it was Dad's birthday and you were upset and you were crying, and I think one of your friends had come up and said, oh, you know, you okay? Why are you crying? Oh, it's Dad's birthday. Oh, you're still crying about that? That was ages ago. It was like 3 years ago.
It was wild.
And you got really angry. Yeah. And I thought, well, of course they can't understand.
Of course they can't. And I was never for a second actually angry at that person, because I know that they couldn't understand, and I know that it's not their fault.
Yeah.
We always talk about what the hardest parts of grief are. Could you talk to me about what this means?
So the hardest part of grief, gosh, I mean, I was absolutely terrified of grief. I just thought I was just going to melt into some big grief puddle. But as a mum, I knew that I had you three to look after and try and kind of help and go through. And the pain of it, once I was on the path of grief and realised actually it wasn't going to kill me, I was going to survive it. There are times where it's utterly, devastatingly sad. I did actually pass out once from the pain of it. I think planning the funeral, and choosing the readings and stuff, I literally fainted. But actually, grief is very much... it almost gives you as much pain as you can cope with and then pulls away.
Okay.
That's what I found. It was like sort of being in a horrific kind of storm and being battered by waves, and then almost like the sun comes out and there's a bit of calm, and then you feel like you can cope with it a little bit better. And it's oscillating between the pain and normal life. So it would be that desperate wanting to see Emily again, or I'd even say goodbye to Nico.
Yeah.
But then having to go make tea for you,
Yeah.
or take the dogs for a walk, or so normal life is always there, but the pain is always there as well. I think what you don't realise at the beginning with that the loss when you lose somebody is the future losses that you're going to have.
Yeah.
So for example, your 18th, your 21st, your graduation, your dad isn't there, your sister isn't there, they should be there. Not only do I feel desperately sorry for you, I feel desperately sorry for him. And I think that's something that wasn't kind of part of my awareness at the beginning. And that can be, it's almost like you relive it all over again whenever there's another big day.
Yeah, oh my God, completely. I remember like my graduation, it's like, I was really happy. Thank God I managed to graduate uni. Like, we were barely there, but I managed to do it. And I just remember sitting there and just being like, fuck, I wish Dad was here. Like, I wish I had my dad. And then instantly I'm back in the water with him.
Really?
And instantly I'm the one, trying to look after him and swimming with him. And I found that so hard, because I don't like my last memory to be of Dad like that. Like, and everyone says this about their parents, but like Dad was so funny. Like, he was so charismatic. A lot of the things that come with grief from a dad is your dad is kind of, in a lot of cases, your protector in a way. Like, and then that safety, exactly.
You know, he gives you trust in the world and safety in the world.
Yeah.
And then suddenly that's taken away from you.
I know.
And you were left with a mum with one leg who wasn't there basically for a year. You know, you'd lost a sister, you've got one sister left. Terrifying. I mean, your whole safety structure in life had been completely taken away from you. And I think that took a long time to kind of build up back together again.
And I think that's, it's something that I seriously struggled with. The effects that having kind of that protective figure just wiped away from me and me instantly, because the survival instinct kicked in, and I was like, literally as I was taking him to the kayak, I was like, okay, I have to do everything myself now. Like, I am, because I didn't know what had happened to you.
No.
I didn't know if you were even alive.
Well, you almost had to sort of care for me for a while. So you're flipping from child to adult very quickly.
And I do think that gave me a really different perspective to a lot of my peers. I know that's a very, cliche thing to say, but I do think I had a completely different perspective.
I agree. It's hard to let go because you've had to be so strong, so resilient, so independent, not letting anything be kind of fluid or flexible. And that affects relationships now, because actually, do I want to let myself go with somebody? Because I've created this kind of persona, this kind of self-concept of being super resilient and strong. And actually, do I want to maybe let someone in that I could be hurt, or my sense of safety in the world could be taken away from me again?
Yeah.
So I think that's completely understandable, Amber.
And we are doing an episode on these issues in relationships, which I think will be very interesting to delve deeper into it.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to note that every family grieves very differently. And we're big believers in that there is no normal way to grieve. There is no set handbook guide.
No.
There's no rule book on how to grieve.
Yes.
Yeah. What did you find worked, and what did you find didn't work about how our family grieved?
Oh gosh. Like you, I was kind of desperate to kind of find this kind of rule book and this guidebook to kind of tell me what to do. Like, normally in life there's everything that you can do. But it was just working it out on our own. Once I realised that there was no, rule book. I mean, there's Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. So I remember kind of reading that, and there's anger and denial, and, it goes on, acceptance. But they're not linear phases. So it's not like you do anger and then tick that box, and then you go into denial and tick that box. And
I think that's a common misconception.
Yeah,
with grief
they
as
sort of like come in and out, and sometimes you can be really angry. And of course you're angry. Like something horrific has happened. And I think what was great about the way that we dealt with it was there was no, I think because we were all in the accident together. So we all knew what had happened, and it's not like something had happened, you were in a car accident that I wasn't involved in. So there was acceptance from the start, and we were all really honest with each other about how we were feeling. I don't think a lot of us kept our feelings kind of hidden from each other. I tried to be as honest as I possibly could about grief. I do remember Julia Samuels, my grief counsellor, and she would say, use words like dead, gone, not gone to sleep or whatever. It's sort of be honest with the words that you use and cry. Because if you're not crying, your children might think that you're not sad, and then they're thinking, well, maybe it's not okay to be sad. What have we not done well? I sort of feel like as we go further away from the loss, it's harder to keep their memory alive. I don't know if you feel that.
I definitely feel that, but I also feel in grief that's inevitable because, as time passes, memories fade.
Yeah.
I can definitely think of so many things that I could have done better with grief.
I think being self-compassionate is really important.
Yeah, I do.
Because I think we do spend a lot of our lives saying, well, I could have done that better.
Yeah.
Or maybe I should be doing this. Or how do I grieve well? You feel what you feel.
Yeah.
And I think allow yourself to let those feelings in. That's what I've got better at. At the beginning, there was a lot of burying, a bit like you. There was a lot of, it's all fine. Like, I can do this. I've got this. I'm coping. But actually, it was all bubbling under. And then I remember taking you. Do you remember for your 18th birthday, we went to the Tate Modern and we sat out and had a drink on the members' balcony. And it was so beautiful. And you look out over the Thames and you look out over St. Paul's. And I absolutely burst into tears. And I was so grateful that I now had another adult in the house because I'd felt such overwhelming responsibility.
And to be very clear, I did not act like an adult at the time, but I was.
Yeah, I then realised actually that 18 was just a number, not in actions.
Yeah.
But no, I remember thinking, you know, that I've got these 3 children to bring up and I'm doing it all on my own and this is like totally terrifying. And then suddenly I was like, oh my God, you're 18. Like, I have got another adult in the house that can help me. And you just kind of put your arms around me, gave me a massive hug and said, Mum, I just wonder whether it might be useful to have some therapy. And I was like, yeah, I think you might be right.
I think you're right. Because I think that's the first time, because you put on such a brave face the whole time. Like, I literally did not see this woman's mask slip. A few days after, no, it must have been a week after the accident happened, I went to go meet you on the hospital floor. This woman, like, her leg is gone. And you were literally there with weights doing bicep curls with your leg like up, elevated. I was like, what is actually going on right now? And you continued like that for years, which was so helpful to us.
Well, that was just complete and utter denial.
She would go around on her wheelchair cooking like these incredible meals for us. She couldn't reach the oven, so she'd be like, "Oh, can you pass this to me?" She'd literally be like speed wheeling around the kitchen.
I remember making granola like 3 weeks after the accident, and my friends going, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
But I think it was just a desperation to get back to normality or doing something that the old Victoria would have done. And that was a real drive for me.
No, I agree. I think seeing you when I was 18 and seeing you that day at the Tate Modern and you actually opening up and saying, yeah, I'm actually struggling.
I'm vulnerable.
And I was like, okay, I'm old enough to hear this now. Like, get into therapy, Queen. Like, go do your thing.
I'm glad you said that I'm old enough to hear this now, because I think that was part of it, that I didn't want to share my vulnerability and worries with you because you were children.
Yeah.
But actually, it felt so good to be able to be honest and just kind of say, do you know what? I'm actually really struggling as well. So maybe that is a bit of advice about grief. It's be honest with what you're feeling, actually. One thing that I was very aware about grief is it's invisible. Yeah. It's not like you're walking around with a broken arm.
No, yeah, it's very true.
Or you've had chemo and you've lost your hair. People don't know that you're struggling. So even if it's 5 years, 6 years, 2 weeks afterwards, they don't know that I haven't woken up and had an awful dream about Emily and I'm really struggling today. Yeah. So actually, if people go, how are you? Do you know what? Actually, I'm not great. Yeah. I'm really a bit fragile today. Yeah. And I'd love it if you could come around and maybe have a cup of tea or whatever it is that you feel that you need. Yeah. If you are going through some sort of challenge, no matter what it is, I do think it's very important to check yourself and just be aware of it and just maybe sit yourself down. Just take 5 minutes and I'd be like, okay, what are you feeling? Do you need to sit with this for a bit longer and just actually face it head on? Because it is the hardest thing to do, sitting there and actually facing it head on. But if you sit there for a bit and just sit with your emotions and think, okay, I'm feeling this, doesn't feel great, let's just ride it out for 5 minutes. And if it doesn't feel better after 5 minutes, I don't think it's a good idea for you to go out. If it does, or 10 minutes, then you can go out, but at least you've kind of tackled it head on for a bit. I think it's really true. It's sort of just sit down, check in. I think it's a really good thing. Maybe just pause. Yeah. What do I need right now? Do I need to just actually sit and chill and get a takeaway and watch Netflix? Or do I need to go and have fun? A dog walk. Or whatever it is that makes you feel good. Yeah. But isn't numbing the pain. I think trying to be brave and face that pain, but it's such a balance, isn't it? It's such a balance, because sometimes you do actually really need it as well. And I think it's true. And I think sometimes when something awful has happened, you forget how fun life can be and actually how fun you can be as well as a person. Yeah, agreed. That everything can be heavy and difficult and dark, and you're kind of trudging through treacle. And it is really important to go out sometimes and have a brilliant night and remember that you are a really fun, brilliant person and that life is there to be lived as well. Yeah. So, Mum. Yes. To round out this episode, I thought it would be a good idea if you could just give your quick fire top tips for whether it's grief, trauma, or just any sort of challenge. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think the main things that I have learned, I think the first is acceptance. Actually accept where you are, because that's only when you can start to move forward. Start is another good one. It's like, am I going to be the victim and hide away and always let this thing define me that's happened to me? Or am I going to push forward and try and find a way out? Step by step, that was a big one for me, which was slightly ridiculous because when I lost one leg, I suddenly realised how many metaphors there were about feet. I remember the doctor saying, You just need to put one foot in front of the other. Sorry, I mean hop. But that for me was huge because, as I said, life felt so overwhelming that I just had to get to the next hour or get to lunch or get to dinner. And, you can't do everything all at once. Set really small, achievable goals. Self-compassion, hugely important, which I was terrible at the beginning. I'd be doing the whole, you should be doing this, and I can't believe you've just got up and it's midday and you haven't even had breakfast yet and you look terrible. And so self-compassion. So you'd never say to your best friend, oh my God, look at the state of you, and you've only just got up, and what's with the stains? And so it's that whole, Julia Samuels calls it the shitty committee.
Love that.
So get rid of the shitty committee and actually focus on the things that you're doing brilliantly. And just accept that you're not going to be as productive as you were before. Fill your diary with things that you enjoy doing. And for me, it's about the frequency of joy, not the intensity of joy.
Okay.
So you might have some amazing 21st coming up in wherever, but that might not be till July.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling broken and really struggling at the moment, that's too far away. It's March.
Completely agree. Yeah.
So actually, dog walk with a girlfriend,
Yeah.
little glass of wine after work, coffee from your favourite coffee place, go to the cinema. Doesn't have to be mega things.
Yeah.
Just really small things that maybe you've got something every day that you go, I'm really, really struggling and feeling so low. But tomorrow I'm seeing Amber or, whatever it is. Be honest with yourself and share emotions. I journal. I know it doesn't work for everybody, but actually just to try and really understand what I'm feeling, I find that really important. And have your close allies that you can actually be really honest with and phone up, and they're going to be non-judgmental, they're going to be empathetic, and they're going to prize you as this amazing person that you are. So that would be my top tips.
Great. Well, Mum, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. I feel really honoured.
Look at us.
Interviewed by my daughter. A bit odd.
It is a bit odd, isn't it?
It's a bit odd. But no, it's been gorgeous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amber, for sharing your story. And like we said, I'm sure you'll touch on it a lot more throughout these episodes. To end and to round things off, can you kind of give the listeners a bit of an insight of what they can expect coming up in the next few episodes?
Yes. So in the next few episodes, we have a kind of a wide range of different topics that we're going to cover. We are going to be covering ADHD and how to navigate life with ADHD. We're also going to be talking about nutrition and ADHD. We're going to be talking about sibling loss. We're going to be covering quite intense topics like suicide. We're going to be covering attachment issues, such as abandonment issues. We're going to chat to a few people about their experiences with an eating disorder and how they've managed to cope with it and how they have dealt with recovery.
There's obviously loads to come, and hopefully, like we said at the beginning, this is going to be a really safe space for people to feel less alone, and if you're not going through it, to hopefully support someone else who is going through it, learn something new. And we're really excited for everything to come.
We are very excited. And also, no matter how small the challenge is, just come and listen. And if you're, commuting to work or going on a walk and just need to relax a bit, this is a completely safe space. We just want it to be as uplifting and as educational as possible. So we're looking forward for what's to come.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.